Good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. My name is Doug Brunke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. Today we have our regular programming on what's going on in Africa, hot market opportunities. I am personally very hot in a positive, optimistic way about Africa and its possibilities. My own career has not taken me very much to Africa. It's been primarily involved with Asia and Europe and the US. And so now in hopefully not the twilight, at least in the next 20 to 30 years, as I hope and expect to be supporting our team growth around the world with Global Chamber, I think there's going to be a massive transformation in Africa. And I think leaders like we have here on the call, the things that Komi Klou, as an example, is doing, is going to help Africa be significantly more successful over the next couple decades. So I want to be able to, like you, look back 20, 30 years from now and say, wow, I remember when, yes, we were talking about the future of Africa, that there was so much potential, but actually over the last couple decades, a lot of that potential has been realized. And the way that's going to happen is governments need to be a little bit cleaner and supportive. Entrepreneurs need to be continually diligent and smart and intelligent and collaborative and supportive of each other, as we're doing here at Global Chamber. We're very fortunate to have so much of our team and our members here today across Africa, all 54 countries. I know several key folks are not here today, so we'll have to catch up with them in January. Our plan for next year is to have a monthly conversation about what opportunities are happening in Africa. Today's purpose is then to focus in on those and get people's perspectives on what regions, what market segments, what opportunities are available. And there are many of you that I want to make sure that we hear from, and I encourage all of you with opportunities and ideas and thoughts to share them today. If you don't mind, I would love to start with a couple people. I see, and if Katie, I don't know whether you're going to be able to speak or not, but Katie Sanat earlier had communicated some of the opportunities that they've started to develop with Africa in Wisconsin. So would love to be able during the call today to have you share that as well. If you don't mind, I'd love to start with Komi Klou, who is today sitting in Delaware, the US, but he spends a lot of time in Africa, and particularly in the Francophone countries, Benin, Ghana, Ivory Coast, and he has been spending an increasing amount of effort in agriculture and food production and moving that along more aggressively. He's got a technology experience. He's got experience all across Africa, but particularly in that region. And Komi, I wonder if you could start with sharing with us some observations that you may have and some things we should be thinking about within the continent of Africa that look like they're going to be really good opportunities in 2023.
Thank you, Doug. Our approach is very simple. Anytime we look at any business venture or sector, we look at the problem to be solved. And here is the problem that we have in Africa in the food and beverage industry. We spend between 12 to 13 billion dollars to import foods to Africa. Now, how could that be if Africa is this poor? Where are we getting the money from to import food? You see, this is the root, one of the roots of African poverty in Africa. We spend a lot of money importing our food. I'm not going to pick on my good brother here, Nihi, but let me just give you a case study, a very funny example. For instance, in Nigeria, there are some people who are so rich, their pizza delivery, they order the pizza delivery from London, which is delivered to them by British Airways. every evening. This is craziness.
Mm-hmm.
If it is not craziness, tell me what it is. So we need to change, we Africans. So the one way we do that is by starting to produce foods for our local consumption and to stop exporting our raw material, be they agricultural raw material or mining raw material. We need to move into processing, industrialization, and value addition. So in 2023 and beyond, our focus will be to support the small and medium agro companies and agro processing companies so that they can produce the foods for local consumption. And one of a very vibrant area is in the poultry industry. I mean, Africans, chicken is like a staple now. Almost everybody eat chicken because our rivers have been depleted. So because the basis of consumption was fish, the fish is no longer there. So more and more people are switching their eating habits to chicken. But we do not produce enough chicken, enough poultry products, eggs, chicken. There's a huge demand for it. So what we're doing now is to support, we have a private equity fund to support those local agro production and processing and distribution companies so that they can have the capital. But we don't give them only the capital, we give them the human capital also, which is the expertise and the know-how, so that we can build scalable business models that can service the needs of the sub-African continent. So stay tuned. Over the next couple of weeks and months and years, you'll be hearing a lot from me about agriculture and agro processing and agro business in Africa. Thank you.
The name of the organization there is, you've got behind you there, right? It's not.
Yes.
It's the African Agro Capital. Okay. It's not blue. It's not Blue Man Group. Why is your skin blue? What's going on there? You have a blue lighting. Normally at Christmas it's red and green, but you've decided to go blue today. What's going on there?
Yes. It's because of lighting. So it is sunny today in Delaware. So
I see. Okay, very good. So which countries are you primarily focused in on?
For now, I'm focused on Togo and Ghana for 2023.
Okay.
Have great potential in Ivory Coast, huge potential. Ivory Coast produces a lot of cassava and cassava flour are gaining some traction now, even in the bakery industry, in the global bakery industry. Cassava flour are getting a lot of traction because cassava flour is gluten-free.
Okay, I'm going to open up the floor to questions, but I had just a couple more quick ones. One, and Katie Sanat on the call from Wisconsin mentions about the way that a Wisconsin tax law favors companies that produce food and manufacturing in general to be able to produce in Wisconsin and land. And I'm wondering, you're really focused in on creating food production in Africa. Do you imagine a time when you'll be able to be looking at African companies setting up in Wisconsin and other parts of the world?
Yes. Setting up in Wisconsin, not to necessarily produce or grow any crop, but maybe to do food processing. For instance, we're talking about value addition. There's another product that is called fonio. I don't know if you know it. It's a food product. It's a grain. It's fonio. It's in high demand now, but the health food stores sell them. So these are the type of products that could be processed in Wisconsin. Because of the climate, I don't think that we can grow our products in Wisconsin, but processing, yes.
Okay. What about things like exporting the cocoa and producing product, those kinds of opportunities?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's what I said. In Ghana and Ivory Coast, we're in the mindset now that we're no longer going to export the cocoa beans. So what we're doing is, at the very least, we are doing some value addition, semi-processing, where from the cocoa beans we produce the cocoa butter. So the cocoa butter can be brought to Wisconsin to start producing chocolate. If we have enough milk there, we can do a partnership there.
Okay.
And maybe I could add, Doug, this is Katie. Thanks for those comments. I appreciate it. We did just have Niche Cocoa Land. They're from Ghana. They're the largest cocoa producer in the country of Ghana. And they'll have their own facility in Wisconsin to produce cocoa cake from pulverized cocoa powder that they will import from Ghana. So that's really exciting. Yeah. We're really excited about that.
Niche is one of the big cocoa players in Ghana. Yeah.
Fantastic. Congratulations on that success. How did that happen, Katie? How does a Ghanaian cocoa producer and then the manufacturing company find Wisconsin, and what was it about Wisconsin that attracted them?
Well, I think there were two things. One, it was the perseverance of our sales team, who went out and met with Niche Cocoa repeatedly. They originally weren't considering Wisconsin. They were considering an East Coast state simply because of their connections to that state. But when we showed the long historic food processing industry in Wisconsin and the workforce in food processing and all of the ingredients manufacturers around them, they were convinced that Wisconsin was the place to go. And they just announced their new facility in September. So super excited.
Interesting.
Kenny, what about exporting to Africa? Like, there are some products that we could not produce in Africa. For instance, another very attractive product is smoked turkey. Or not. Smoked turkey wings, smoked turkey thigh. They are in high demand in Africa, but we do not produce them in Africa. So maybe you and I will need to
connect.
and share notes. There's a lot that we import to Africa that we could not produce locally.
That would be great. Thank you.
Isn't that sausage company New Johnsonville in Wisconsin, or am I wrong? Is that
no? Johnsonville is here. That is a brat and pork product company. Okay. But we have lots of dried meat products too that could go along with the smoked turkey.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Interesting. I'll bet you, Elizabeth Glenn there in Southern California, you, as part of your exporting and helping manufacturers there, undoubtedly you're experienced in this market segment as well. Anything to add? Any support of California you'd like to supply, or more in the manufacturers in general?
I typically work, thank you for the opportunity. I typically work with manufacturers. However, I do have connections into the Central Valley, which is a strong agricultural resource. So I'm happy to reach out. And I suspect if we're going to be supporting all of Africa, the demand is going to come from more than one state, probably multiple states, I would imagine.
Yeah, and we've got on the advisory board there in Global Chamber Los Angeles, Bako from Nigeria, who is importing hibiscus leaves into Atlanta primarily, but there's also a warehouse in Los Angeles. And so through either the Port of LA or through through Atlanta, I presume by boat. So,
Or if, and then just to build on that, as if it's something that's coming into Los Angeles that's moving, that ultimately will be moved into Atlanta, there's probably opportunity to utilize what we call foreign trade zones, which could reduce imports, right? You know, rather than import it at the port of entry in California, maybe it wouldn't get released until it reaches Georgia.
I'm wondering, and I'd like to open it up the floor, either raise your hand or unmute yourself. Maybe Ingrid in Ghana, given that we've been talking a little bit about Ghana, is there anything else that you would like to add, either about this segment or anything else more broadly relative to opportunities in Ghana?
Not really, but I would like to ask Mr. Comey. He's been saying that 2023 he's going to focus mainly in Togo and in Ghana. He's ongoing quite a few projects. I would like to understand a little bit further, how does he support these small, medium enterprises that they want to carry out in a project? And I understood that you bring the know-how, but after my experience, or as per my experience here in Ghana, where I'm based, after 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, all that know-how seems to vanish. So there's like a gap there that it does not continue. I don't know if I'm explaining myself properly.
Okay, so you're saying that training is required, and it's an ongoing training.
Ongoing.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any support that you are currently implementing in your projects to ensure that after 6 months or 1 year, that project is not going to fail?
Okay, now that's a good question, and I do get that question quite often. We have a different approach. Any project that we adopt and that we decide to invest in, we do not invest only capital, we invest our human expertise also. So we have a model called investor managed model. So when we take a small business, for instance, we do a need assessment, which is a very thorough need assessment and due diligence. And we identify the management gaps. Then we find somebody who represents our organizations, which we place there. We call it secondment. We second them into that organization. And like holding hands approach. And they take the senior leadership or the owner of the project and stay with them for a minimum of 12 months so that they can build the practice. You see, it's one thing to tell somebody to do something. It's quite a different one to show them how to do it and to be on the ground. I know it is a little expensive and time consuming, but based on our experience, this is the only formula which is working. It has been done successfully by a country called Morocco, which will be playing a semi-final in the World Cup this afternoon. But Morocco have done this successfully. That's how they have been able to just grow their economy, and they are taking over most of sub-Saharan African countries. So that's the model we use. I will be happy to talk with you so we can share notes.
Did I don't know if that, okay, did that answer your question, Ingrid? And I'm wondering for both of you, how do the universities and the business schools and the engineering schools tie into this? And is there enough happening on that side of to be able to pull students in, to be able to be the engineers, to be the producers, and to create this export mentality that's going to be required?
That's a good question, Doug. I'm not sure if you know, on part-time, on my free time, I lecture at some of the universities across Africa.
Okay.
Problem we have at the higher institutions in Africa is they are not built to support the business community. I'm sorry to say that. They are built so that the student can graduate and have a piece of paper, but in reality, they don't know how to do anything. So I hire a lot of interns from the top-notch universities across Africa. When they come on board, day one, day two, they don't know how to do almost anything. So that's why we have adopted this format. Yeah, maybe we can retrofit and partner with the universities so that they can change their curriculum, but that would be too complicated.
Okay. Ingrid, did you have something to add to that? It sounds like.
Yeah, I would like to add. Unfortunately, I have to agree with Mr. Comey. Universities over here, they are very much theoretical, not that practical. But then at the same time, I think we need to highlight, at least in Ghana, I'm not going to talk about other African countries because I know each one of you are very different, but at least in Ghana, youth here is amazingly flexible. They are really, really, really talented. It is true that they come out from university, and most of the times you even have to teach them how to write an official email, some basics like that. But I can tell you that if you give them the opportunity, if you give them the trust, and of course, together with tools, it's amazing the potential that Ghanaian youth have. At least as per my experience, I have a great team. We are 8 people. Next month, we are 9. And honestly, you could be amazed if you could. And they are all young people, 20-something. But you need to trust them and you need to give them the opportunity.
So this is, both of your inputs is just so valuable. And I really like, I hadn't thought of it this way yet in terms of a specific initiative, but what I'd like to do is start an initiative on Global Chamber with the universities, key universities, and maybe, and I don't know if anybody here is from Kenya, but the Thunderbird Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya Center for Africa is a really key place for us because they're a very strong partner of ours. They've been hosting the president of Kenya this week, which I couldn't get to, but I was invited to, and I was very honored to be able to do that. The example that I've given before, and I'll just make sure that I share it briefly now, is something maybe we can think about for what we want to do across Africa, and that's the nearshoring model for Mexico. And I know Stephanie Austin, she has a very strong member who's Andrew, who is her board chair, is part of a company called improving.com. And part of that company, there's a nearshoring IT company. 15 years ago, nearshoring IT was almost nothing. So this is the idea of young Mexican information technology experts basically outsourcing, exporting their talent into the US. So from a US company perspective, it's less expensive, typically about 35% less expensive than an American using the IT. And nearshoring means it's not India, like, you know, it's more expensive than India, but it's closer proximity-wise, so communication is better. And so how does something like that start? 15 years ago, there was almost nothing happening. And so some initiatives were made by entrepreneurs that said, okay, let's convince some of the universities like around Hermosillo, Mexico, and Monterrey to develop these programs, get the professors, teach the programs, and do the marketing of the idea to students so that they could join, you know, so that they'd be interested in doing this and then move forward. So, and then of course it takes 4 years to get to, you know, or 2 years if they've already kind of been in there. So there's a time, but you have to think about it ahead of time. Like, let's get the classes, let's get the students, then let's build the pipeline with businesses to be able to get it out. Within 5 years, it started to become a solid business. And now 15 years later, it's a multi-billion-dollar business. And so maybe there's some opportunities, and I'm sure somebody must be doing this in Africa, where there's some promotion of through the business schools of encouraging people to create more value locally, and you've got to have people to be able to do that, right? So I would love to, Comey and Ingrid and anybody else interested, let's pull our heads together and see if we can get more of that happening to encourage more of this happening. So Comey, what's your response to that? Does that make sense, or is it too basic, or what am I?
No, I'm smiling. I'm smiling because I was giving a talk on a podcast
Okay.
yesterday,
Okay.
and somebody heard me and they referred me to an IT company. We have a call scheduled for
That's okay.
Friday. And that's exactly what they want to do. That's exactly what they want to do.
That can be done in IT too. There's no reason why IT talent couldn't be developed more and more in Africa and then used in Europe as a nearshoring model, right? I mean, that's, yeah.
Like Ingrid said, the Ghanaian, the African youth, they are smart, they are willing, they are hungry for knowledge, but they just need the opportunity and the right tool. So, but Doug, I beg to differ. In Africa, if you want to do it within the university, unless you get somebody, a like-minded partner, the universities will waste your time through some bureaucracy. It's just a complex system. So the way you do it is either you partner with a training center or a business institute, and you do it. Or you start the way we're trying to do it now in Ghana is you start on a small scale, and we're willing to partner with Global Chamber. You start on a small scale, and by doing it in-house, and then you scale. Once you have the process down, you can just scale it up, and then maybe go to a training school. But the former government 4 years universities, they will waste your time. They're just looking for money. They'll waste your time. We need to have a different approach.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody have any other comments about this?
This is Elizabeth. If I could just share, and this, Doug, you're aware of this, I'll put it in the chat, but there is an initiative called the 100 Million Learners Global Initiative, hosted by the Thunderbird School of Global Management, and it provides educations. You can get certificates at no cost, and you're talking about engaging that knowledge. There's multiple levels. I'll put that in, and it is now active now. So, and the goal is to reach out and provide this education, a basic global education, so that people can become more engaged in global business.
So this is the 100 Million Learner Initiative by Thunderbird, actually. Yes. And that's what the president of Kenya got so excited by. I didn't know it until I searched, but 9 months ago, apparently, he was exposed to this idea. And then that's a lot of the initiative this week that was happening today, actually, in Washington, that I couldn't go to, where he's talking about the 100 Million Learner initiative and getting it to more young people in Kenya, where his focus is. But so we'll find out, we'll get more information and circle that around for all of you. But Sanjeev Kagram, who's the dean there and who's a good friend of Global Chamber, and he was the one that invited us to have our headquarters within the Thunderbird. He's very high on this. I am very high on this, and let's see what we can do. The class is a little more general relative to specific manufacturing kind of things, but maybe there's a way to kind of weave all this in, or maybe convince Thunderbird to bring in some other aspects that are more detailed. And so thank you. Please raise your hand if you have some additional comments or questions. I would like to go, while we're waiting for you to raise your hand or jump in, I'd love to go to Demetris Evans, who's been a member of Global Chamber and on our regional advisory board in Chicago, Illinois, and she's becoming our board chair for 2023. I look forward, Demetris, to working with you in that role. She is, an attorney, and she primarily focuses in on trade, and helping companies trade in every direction. And I did get your message, Demetris, about your interest in this area. Would you like to share anything or any perspectives regarding your view from the Midwest?
I would absolutely. I wanted to share, I was working with some young people that are a part of the Mandela Washington Fellowship for Young African Leaders.
Yes.
And I don't know if you're familiar with this program, but my understanding is that they are actually paid. So there's payment for them to come to the US and work with an organization, and then from there disperse to different companies. And while they're learning, but they're very learned. So it seems that they're about, it seems like 25 to 30 or 35 or something like that. And then they are already working in business. So they could be placed in, like they could come through the chamber, and then we could have them work with other companies to maybe facilitate some of that trade, putting the real nuts and bolts into place. I think that would be fantastic. I'm very much willing to jump in and, see how to get it started and what are the requirements, because I think, just listening, some wonderful ideas have been shared, and I think it's just going to be a matter of implementation.
I think Cesar Trabanco might be able to add to that. Cesar, do you want to share a little bit of our experience there? Are you available?
Yes. Can you hear me well?
Yep, perfectly.
Yeah, so Demetrius, we've been working with the Mandela Fellows for a couple of years now, but the last group, I think after the pandemic, the last group that came this year, they ended up being many of them. So we did two events, one of them with Phoenix and the other with San Antonio. And many of them, after we shared information about the Global Chamber, accepted to be our global advisors. And so they are now back in Africa and they're part of our network. I'm saying that if, for instance, an example that comes to mind, if someone's going to Madagascar, we have a guy there, which is an amazing guy. And so that's the way it works. But I found out this week that the group, I think 2 or 3 from Ethiopia, they're actually part of the board of our executive director in Ethiopia, and similar is in South Africa. So we've been working with them. They're typically very, very interested to remain engaged in the Global Chamber and expand the network and make new connections. That's our experience with the group.
That's fantastic. So just as a follow-up, did they actually come to the US and work with the chamber before going home, or is it just working in their countries?
Not really with the chamber. They have the different projects. We have the contacts in, at least in Phoenix and San Antonio, probably overseas, of the person who is in charge of the group. And we do some events where they exchange information and all that. But they're working with different companies in the US.
So it's similar, it's really largely guided by the US State Department, and not to focus too much here on the US initiatives. However, I think this is a really important connection between the US and Africa, not the least of which is what's going on in Washington today, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, which is the US Africa Summit led by President Biden, who says, hey, we need to make these connections. But historically, the Mandela Washington Fellowship has been one where several hundred per year people young Africans are selected as exceptional potential future leaders. They come to the US, taking all their expenses paid, and they get training. And I remember at the beginning of Global Chamber 6 or 7 years ago, I remember passing a conference room at Arizona State University, and there were all these people, and I found out it was a Mandela group that was being trained on how to run a town hall in a democracy. And so the training is like a whole variety of things, even basics like that, but a lot of it is business oriented. And these people are picked because they're already made an impact, and now they just want to have them have additional skills, go back to Africa, and then hopefully have a good feeling about the US. That's where the diplomacy part of it is, and then have an impact. And it's similar to the International Visitor Leadership Program, which is 75 years old in the US. Wisconsin has one, every state has this type of an initiative. And a very quick example of that is one that we were involved with in Arizona, where it was a congressman in Croatia was selected because he seemed like he could make a big impact in the future in Croatia. Came to, typically that program is 3 weeks, 1 week in each location, spent a week in Arizona, met at the time, the governor, Janet Napolitano, who now runs the California state education system, met Janet, met many of us. He came back, he got ideas about what he wanted to do as a politician, went back to Croatia, ran again as a representative and won, ran as president of Croatia and won, and then implemented women's rights and the diversity. And he basically implemented a lot in Croatia that he had learned how to do in the US and became a friend of the US and a tie. So that's, I mean, ultimately how diplomacy and politics and business and all of that work together. And the Mandela program that you bring up, Dimitris, is an example of the wonders of non-military government aid. Thank you. Look forward to working with you in the coming year. Does anybody else have any comments before we kind of go around the room? I see Mohammed, you have your hand raised, and I see Nihi, you have your hand raised. Nihi, why don't you go next? Nihi Sanusi is Lagos, Nigeria. He's an attorney, and he's very well connected all across the continent. Recently, he gave us a connection he had in Burundi that one of our members needed a real estate deal done. And so thank you, Nihi, for all the work that you do. And then you had that deal that came up the other day that Comey processed. So thank you. What would you like to share, please?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment regarding the nearshoring potential opportunity with Global Chamber. It will be good for Nigeria as well. In some parts of our IT sectors, some of our top institutions, there's a shortage of senior software engineers and the like. And so it's affecting some of the applications that they conduct on a regular basis. So regarding IT, I think for Nigeria, we'll be very interested to partner with the Global Chamber, at least look into it and see how it works for us.
Okay. These things are very possible. And, you may not know this name, but there was a fellow named W. Edwards Deming, who was an American, who said, hey, you Americans, you need to be better at manufacturing. And nobody listened to him, or very few people in the United States listened to him during the 1960s and 70s. So he went to Japan. And guess what? The Toyota production system is basically an American invention that the Japanese took from W. Edwards Deming. He was very happy to tell them and share with them and for them to improve, because decades later, the Americans then had to catch up to the Japanese, and they started quality control, et cetera. And that my international career started 1 year before my first international trip to South Korea. I spent a week with W. Edwards Deming, and it changed my life forever. He was an extraordinary leader, 90 years old at the time. Finally, towards the end of his life, people started to realize that this was a visionary. This was a man who could not just transform Japan, but help to transform the US. And those are the kinds of transformations. People like Comey stepping up, and those of the rest of you in this call and others that you know, by standing up now and helping Africa succeed, just like W. Edwards Deming was able to do with other entrepreneurs within the continent, the same success is going to happen. So thank you, Nihi, for sharing. Mohammed, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. You hear me?
Yes, we can. Tell us, I'm not sure I know you. Are you a member? Are you, it looks like you're in Djibouti, so welcome.
Yes, you know Djibouti?
Of course, we have a Global Chamber. Our executive director is Fouad, but he's not on the call today.
Okay, thank you.
What would you like
I
to
am,
share?
yes, I am alumni of YALI, Young African Leader Initiative.
Wonderful.
Yes.
U.S. State Department program. I was wondering if
Yes.
anybody on the call was. Thank you.
Yes, I visit 2017, Georgia State, Clark Atlanta University, and
Wonderful.
I spent 6 weeks there, very, very, very instructive. Before to visit US, I was entrepreneur. I started my first company 2008, but I have only one company before to visit the United States. Now I have 5 companies in different sector.
Wow.
And this experience in the United States changed my life. Now I am the younger member at the Chamber of Commerce in Djibouti. And I learned also when I come back US, the first accelerator for entrepreneurship in Djibouti. And we already help more than 1,000 young entrepreneurs in our country. So we do training, support, and so many activities, workshop in our country, not only in Djibouti, but all East Africa countries. And also we are member of the with the GAIN Global Entrepreneurship Network, and we do so many events and workshop here in Djibouti. So it's my pleasure. I meet Kirk. Maybe you know Kirk.
Kirk Ulster. Yep. University of Utah grad like me. Yep.
Exactly. He's a very good friend here in Djibouti. So he talked about Global Chamber. And I meet also Fuad, the director of Global Chamber here in Djibouti.
Great.
And it's my first, this is my first meeting. It's my pleasure to be here. And I will be very happy to and open to work with all the Global Chamber members around the world.
We're pleased and honored to have you here today. Thank you very much. And our best regards to Kirk. I need to drop him a line. How is his bicycle shop going?
Very good, very good. He work every day. He get new bicycles recently. We was this morning together, so he do his best.
Fantastic. I see Katie Sanat needs to leave, or I think that's the message that you're sending. Is there anything else that you would like to share, Katie, before you drop off? Katie is the head of Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation and works with companies in Wisconsin leaving and then companies coming in, including that Ghanaian company that she mentioned earlier.
Doug, I think Katie left already. I see Yvonne Rivers with the hand raised.
Okay, very good. I'll follow up with Katie separately. Yvonne Rivers, it's been a long time. How are you? What would you like to share today about opportunities or anything else regarding the topic today?
Absolutely. Yes, I'm here in Washington, D.C. with the Africa business, and it's a whirlwind of things to do. Just a couple of comments confirming with Kenya. I am now registered in Kenya. We did an event in Kenya in October. President Ruto is fascinated with funding. There's a 55 billion Kenyan shillings fund for what's called the Hustlers Fund. So I hear someone was talking about universities. So University of Nairobi, we actually partnered with them to really come in with training with that. So these are some different opportunities in Kenya. It's called the Hustlers Fund. Part of it was released December 1st. The second part will be released February 23rd. That is really, Doug, it's sort of the counterpart. They're funding through CDF, we call them CDFIs here in the US, but they call them SACCOs in Kenya. So that's an opportunity for if you do business training. The comment about the Yali and the Mandela, one of my mentees from Cameroon, so she was here in July through that program. And she spent a week with me after she finished her 6 weeks. So in 6 weeks, they bring them to Washington, D.C. They're hosted in universities all around the country. She was at Lehigh University in Pennsylvania, but they're primed to really learn the country. So she stayed an extra week, and I actually tied her into a lot of different things here in DC. We visited the chamber, the embassy of Cameroon, and so forth. So that's an opportunity there. And the State Department, as you say, runs it. They bring these, they have to apply and be accepted. In fact, I think the applications end maybe in January, but they will travel during the month of July for 6 weeks, completely paid for. And then they have an opportunity to extend their stay if they have contacts. So she came here to DC from Lehigh University in Pennsylvania and spent a week with me, and we did some things right here in DC. So opportunity there. So Kenya is priming with that. Here at the biggest news of the Africa Summit, President Biden just announced yesterday through executive order that $55 billion will be released to Africa to help Africa in the next 3 years. So there's money out there, y'all. That's what I say. And I'm going after it. Thank you, Doug.
That sounds good. Any reaction or anything else that anybody would like to add? I see some that haven't spoken yet, like Nora and Stephanie and Claudia. Anything else, ladies or men, would like to add to the conversation, please?
Hey, yes, Stephanie Austin. How are you doing?
Good morning, Stephanie. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. We were referring earlier about your nearshoring client, but you've also been involved in some other initiatives as well, including the Juneteenth initiative and others. What would you like to share today?
Well, one thing I want to ask actually in regards to doing business in Africa, are they open to, because I've been in healthcare for a while and I've been doing consulting, and I'm wondering if they're open to consultants helping in the medical arena, if that's a need there, and if so, how to find out about it. And then I did see the classes that are being offered through Thunderbird, so I am very.
Stephanie, you just need to go to the, I gave the.
But I would love to partner with companies in Austin, Texas. Yes, I saw that, Elizabeth. I was wondering if anyone needed to do any business in Austin, Texas, if there's anything that I need to do to open doors and relationships. Were you able to hear me?
You're breaking up a little bit, but I think I heard at the end that you were saying that if anybody would like to be connected to Texas, and in particular you're in Austin, you're open and free and would love to be able to work on that side of things. And then you mentioned about the 100 million learner initiative. It's actually pretty easy to find for any of you. And maybe, I don't know, Elizabeth, if you put it in the chat, but if you just search that, it's available, and it's the Francis Najavi and his wife have devoted $25 million to getting that off the ground. And I happen to know maybe way too much information about that program. I do know that it's in 10, by the end of this year, it'll be in 10 languages. At the end of next year, it'll be in about 50 languages. And then at 2024, I think the intent is about 150 languages all around the world. And certainly in Kenya, the intent would be, it's available right now, at least in English, and I'm not sure which other languages.
And just to share that if you look at the website, you'll see the 3 different levels, and you'll see what is available. It's all posted on that web link. Just scroll down.
So and watch for more from us as well. As we continue to develop our relationship with Thunderbird.
Also asking about healthcare consulting in Africa. If there's a need, and how would I find out about doing healthcare consulting work there?
Okay. Does anybody know about the healthcare world in Africa and be able to connect Stephanie? And if not, we can help you, Stephanie. We can find some folks for you. Are there particular countries or types of expertise when you say healthcare consulting? What types of consulting?
So there's consulting and practice administration, hospital inpatient, outpatient, startup
Okay.
of physician practices, primary care, which you really need, as well as pediatrics in countries. I don't have a problem doing that in Ghana, Kenya, some of those countries there. Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, plenty of opportunities. Happy to connect there. And you know, the connectivity between countries is great. I know our new board chair, we talked earlier about Demetris Evans taking over for Global Chamber Chicago as the board chair. Our new board chair for the Phoenix chapter is another amazing lady. And she has been helping the Bank of Kenya in selling. So she has, I think, 50 or more people that at the Bank of Kenya who sell banking services, and she's been supporting their success from Phoenix, Arizona, in terms of getting them to be more effective in selling. Her thing is a lot of different sales training, but it's sales call reluctance, and getting over the fact that some people are afraid to get on the call and talk to people, where some of us, I mean, I spent yesterday on the call on following up with people and doing some selling, and I told my wife that was the most fun I've had in months. That was a lot of fun. I just could just talk to people and find out what's going on. So I guess it's a personality thing. We only have a couple minutes left, and so does anybody have any additional things maybe that we left out? We kind of focused in on some particular areas, but that's part of the reason why for 2023 we want to do this event every month, and then some of the chapters in Africa will also do some additional meetings and events, but we wanted to do a Pan-Africa one just regularly because there's just so much happening, and there will be going forward. Does anybody have any last comments? I think we lost Comey for sure. And Demetris, thank you for your comments very much. Ingrid, do you want to make any final comments? I've really appreciated getting to know you this year, and some of the events that you've done and organized and facilitated for Ghana have been very amazing. You know, and so thank you for jumping in and helping out with all of that. I know.
Thank you so much.
You're really good at that. And then for January, I know Accra has an event coming up towards the end. I think you're finished for the year. Is there anything else you'd like to share, either about activity in Ghana or anything else going on? And it looks like you might be frozen. So. Comey, any last comments you'd like to make?
No, this was like a very, very productive one, maybe one of the best informative session that I have attended lately with African guests. So no, there's a lot of things that we can do, and especially there's a renewed focus on doing business with Africa from the US. We need to, I know Caesar will share the contacts with everybody who is present here, and I'll be reaching out to you personally to see where we might find some synergy to work together. This is
fantastic.
Good.
Yeah. Thank you, Yvonne, for jumping in today. Really appreciate it. Does Lincoln University, by any chance, have a connection to Mandela or not? Oh, you're on mute.
Good deal. Okay. Kwame Nkrumah, is with Ghana. So they are doing something. In fact, I just had a conversation this morning about not only the 2019 was the back to Ghana. Well, they have to 2030. So they have a lot of initiatives of getting from people from the diaspora to Ghana. And it's tied into business opportunities. They actually are offering some different things to citizens or people from the diaspora to eventually get double citizenship with Ghana and the US. Okay. So Lincoln, I was involved with Lincoln of taking Lincoln Goes to Ghana. So I'm working on an initiative to get some Lincoln alumni to really be back there. And I'm quite frankly looking to buy in Ghana. I mean, it's supposed to be freezing rain here in DC tomorrow. It's 29 degrees here today. And I'm like, I promised myself I would not be in this cold weather this winter. So maybe by next year, I'll have a place in Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, or somewhere that I'll be in there talking to you. So, yeah.
I hear you. Yvonne is a graduate of Lincoln University, which is an HBC, historic Black college, which you were not on the call when we started. So we're going to end maybe on the same note. The question we asked at the beginning was, because Comey has it erroneously on his profile on LinkedIn that he's from Kennett Square. And I said, does anybody know what Kennett Square is the capital of? And given that Lincoln is so close to Kennett, I bet you know the agricultural product that makes Kennett Square the capital of the world for what?
So did you know it, Comey?
No, I didn't know
Mushrooms. Mushrooms. And that was back when I was on campus. Mushroom, and it still is the mushroom capital of the world. Kennett Square, Pennsylvania.
You can't smell it from here,
Yeah,
but
I mean,
you can
really.
smell it all over that area.
Exactly. How could you not know that if you travel down Route 1? If you travel down Route 1, you can smell, and it's not a bad smell like cattle or whatever, but it's a smell because they have the houses in which they grow the mushrooms and all of that. It's the Kennett Square is the capital of the world in mushrooms.
That's good. That's good to know.
Absolutely. And right by Longwood Gardens, there used to be a place called Hugo's that was the best mushroom restaurant in the world. The fried mushrooms I can still taste. They were so spectacular. So
I don't know. We as students, Doug, would swear they had mushrooms in the jello. You know, we swore this must be mushroom jello. They use, I mean, like it was pot. We had mushrooms every day. We had mushrooms every day in the cafeteria. Yeah.
Amazing.
Mushrooms are
Amazing.
good for you.
Yeah, but you don't want them all the time.
Yeah, there is a limit. I agree. Thanks everybody for this, our last Africa event for the year. And like Comey said, I think it was very helpful and informative. Have a good rest of your day. We do have quite a number of events still through the end of next week, including our holiday dining on Thursday. And Cesar, do you want to close it out and then we'll finish up the room?
I'm doing the holiday event tomorrow as well with Global Chamber Austin, virtually and in person.
Fantastic. I think there is another chapter that's doing. New York.
There's New York actually happening, I think, at the same time, or they're overlap. The New York virtual holiday event, and then on Friday we have our last League of Opportunities of the year, and I think next week we have the holiday one that Doug mentioned, and the last League of Extraordinaries on Friday as well. So yeah, we're gonna be busy until the 23rd, and then we're gonna get a pause a little bit. But feel free to join us to any of the upcoming events.
Thanks everybody. Have a great rest of the week. Great holiday if we don't talk with you, and we'll see you on the other side. Thanks everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Doc. And Yvonne, Ghana is waiting for you. Is the country to be as a woman? No, Yvonne, I'm just telling you, we are waiting for you here in Ghana as a woman. There's no better country to be than Ghana.
It's on my list. I'm planning on being there actually in June of next year. June, I'll be doing an event, be doing a pitch tank and actually incubator. And actually
that's great.
With some people. So maybe connect with me on phoebemarketing.com.
Definitely.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Happy holidays.
Bye.
Happy holidays.
Bye.